John, today in our conversation with Andy, and he runs the business and owns a business, Scaling Minds. I just think that is a cool name, and it speaks so well to what his message was during the podcast on being able to level up and identifying where you are, where your opportunities are to level up, and how to go about doing it to scale your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. He works with executives and entrepreneurs, and he's a coach. And one of the things we go through in this episode is really know thyself. Really be curious about who you are and what you want to achieve in your life, and align that with your business's strategic plan is really where entrepreneurs and leaders need to start, and then execute the plan.
And there aren't many people we've done this with on an intro, but I would recommend that people go to LinkedIn for Andy Hite, Hite, and read his manifesto. And that will inspire you as much as it inspired us. Here's Andy.
Today's episode is being brought to you by Financial Wing. Are your company's financials keeping you up at night? We all know that today's small to medium-sized businesses often overlook the fundamentals of accounting and financial operations. Our friends at Financial Wing can help with everything from bookkeeping, monthly closing and reporting, budget planning, and much, much more. Financial Wing's reliable and professional approach will quickly build your trust and turn your finances into an asset versus a liability. Go to financialwing.com/EU for your free 30-minute consultation and see what they can do for you.
Andy, welcome to the Entrepreneurs United podcast. Happy to have you this morning.
Hey, super excited to be here, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, can we jump right in and tell us, why are you so passionate about scaling minds?
Awesome question. Was it Epictetus that said, know thyself? Is one of those Stoics, one of those old guys. The more that we scale who we are as a human, the more that we understand how we tick, the more that we create awareness around how we relate to the world, the more opportunity we have for growth. And the more we grow, the better and the quicker results come. And so I've been on a mission of helping people scale who they are, how they think, and how they relate to the world, so that they can really get out into the world and create the thing that they want.
How'd you get into this? I want to dive in. I want to understand like the how you tick and all that stuff, but I'm just
Yeah.
compelled to ask you. That's interesting. Why are you in this? How
Why?
did you get into this?
Yeah.
What drives you that this is the thing for Andy?
98, I was a depressed 23-year-old. Found myself in tears on the floor of my Chicago apartment. And I'm like, dude, there's got to be a better way to do this thing called life. I'm still young. And someone had gifted me a book called The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck. I don't know if you've read it. I haven't revisited since then, but that book changed my life, and it opened a door in me that just became super thirsty for self-development. It showed me the possibility of who I could become with work. And so for 20 years, I devoured personal professional development. And then I started working with a coach before I even contemplated. I didn't really know what it was. And that coach helped me change my life. And everything that I was learning and how I was growing, I started helping friends, colleagues, people that were working for me, and realized that I had a passion to help people improve their lives, their teams, their businesses. And then one day I said to my wife, I think this is really what I'm supposed to be doing. So we created a little bit of a runway to leave the previous career to start this business, and haven't looked back since.
So I know depression's always been a thing, and it's
Yeah.
certainly more of a thing now after we've had the pandemic, and
Yeah.
we hear more and more about it. And it may be that it's more of a thing, or maybe it's just more okay for people to talk about. For our entrepreneur listeners, can you describe, how would one know that they're depressed? The difference between, hey, I'm really down. Hey, I've
Yeah.
had a couple of bad weeks.
Yeah.
And actually you're depressed. How could someone identify with that? And maybe you could share that with us by, how did you know you were depressed when you look back at it?
Yeah, when you find yourself like in a bucket of tears for so long and then can't get out of bed, and That those are good signs that something's off. I'm no psychologist, but what I know is if there's not a lot of motivation, if there is the constant feeling of a cloud and not a lot of hope, that things seem really hard, I think it's time to seek some support because I think we all have this sort of level set where we can get up and go about our days and have a reasonably enjoyable life. And if that's not occurring, there's definitely a lot of support and help that can help people get to that level set. And then that's where someone like me comes in. How do we go just from level to leveling up, creating the next thing and becoming and realizing our potential?
And as you say that, I am remembering I have been told one of the indicators is that you're in bed and just can't find a way to get up. It's not the typical I want to hit snooze again or I
Yeah,
want to grab an extra hour of sleep. It's struggling to get up and get going with the day. And that actually is in the way of being productive. So
yeah.
you were feeling like that at 23 years old.
Hmm.
You read this book, The Road Less Traveled. What did that do for you? Why did reading a book all of a sudden turn your world upside down in a great way?
Yeah, I wish I remember the exact contents of the book, but I think what it taught me at that time was, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not special, that I'm not the only one, and that there's another way that through just it's like getting into the gym. If you want a better body, like it's totally possible, right? Here's sort of a playbook to open that door. And I saw the possibility beyond where I was if I want to answer the call. But I think the bigger part was like, oh, I'm not special. I'm not broken. I There are others out there, and this guy M. Scott Peck has worked with them and has helped them. So maybe I can be helped. And that's when I go to the library and just pick out 5 books and just start devouring it and learning and more.
Isn't
Yeah.
that something when we realize we're not alone, how somehow that's liberating from some of the self criticism and harshness we can put on ourselves?
Talk about like entrepreneurs, right? It is a lonely field. And the more that we can get out of our little bubble and find support and peers, and it really does help. Yeah.
So you mentioned something about leveling up.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
Scaling minds, right? I really have a deep belief that most of us are not even close to what we're capable of. And so those that really are interested in becoming more, being more, achieving more, um, that possibility is there for us, right? And I think it goes back to, okay, who do I need to become if I want to accomplish this, if I want to experience this? Marshall Goldsmith has an awesome book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. Do you guys know the book?
I do. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's really what leveling up is, right? If we stay who we are, if we have the same skills, if we have the same mindset, thoughts, beliefs, attitudes, perspectives, we're pretty much going to get the same results and we're going to have the same experience in life and in work and in our companies. So if we are interested in getting more, achieving more, experiencing more, that's there for us by doing the work of leveling up and scaling our minds and our hearts.
So, Andy, if I'm like, yep,
Yeah.
that all sounds awesome. I want
Yeah.
to get more. I want to do more. I want to be more.
But
I wanna,
how?
yeah, I want to level up.
Yeah.
Are there steps to it? Is there, do you have guidance on, like, again, what is leveling up and how would one go about attacking that?
Yeah. The first the first step is really acknowledging that, oh, I've hit a ceiling, right? I am who I am and I've gotten what I've gotten. And if I want more, acknowledge that, right? And so part of any growth is just awareness of who we are and what we have and what our skills and knowledge is. And it's really, there is no particular playbook. Do this, then that. But it is a journey. It's finding the people, right? One of the ways is Jim Rohn famously said, this was another quote that really was important in my life, you are equal to the 5 people that you spend the most time with, right? So one thing is look at your network. Who are you spending time with? Is that the person you want to become? Is that, are they challenging you? Are they helping you see who you are, what your strengths and weaknesses are? So looking at your network, who are you with? Um, Finding people that can help you see your blind spots. We don't know what we don't know about ourselves until we get curious. Mentors, counselors, coaches can really help people see maybe how they're viewing the world, how they're viewing their teams, how they're viewing their business, and look for the areas where we're not expanding our horizons and thinking of other possibility. Those are a
So,
couple of options.
yeah, that's helpful. I think where you started was acknowledging where you are,
Hmm.
what you've become. So acknowledging where you are, and then you didn't say this exactly, but you alluded to it earlier. Acknowledge where you are, know where you want to get to, and there's a gap in the middle. And
You
if you
just
keep
explained coaching
nah,
in
and
its three main elements. Yes.
and if
Where
you
are you? Where? Yeah,
and if you keep doing what you've always done, you're not going to get to where you want to go.
that's right.
And your recommendation on how do you fill that gap in the middle between clarity on where you are and where you want to go would be look around at who you hang out with. So you're
Yeah.
the average of the top 5 people you hang out with. Level up who you're hanging out with.
Yep.
The other one would be level up who's in your life who challenges you
Yep.
and exposes some blind spots.
Yep. And dig deep. Be very self-reflective. What are my strengths and really what are my weaknesses, right? We don't really learn from our wins what we do well. We learn from where we fail and where we have opportunity for growth. So get really curious around. I work with entrepreneurs all the time, and they have all these flavors of things that hold them back. Some can be too controlling, some can be too perfectionistic, some can be, you name your flavor. And the more that we dig in to see, oh, what are the things that are anchoring me here that won't let me get, say, to my compelling vision of life and work, then we have some awareness and we can do something with it. But I think, I don't want to divert us, but I think you highlighted something that's super, super important. Like, we can't level up until we have some clue of what we want to level up to, both who we are and where we want to be. What I find with leaders and entrepreneurs is they're actually not very good at creating a compelling vision, that place where we want to get to. Because we get lost in, hey, we just got to keep doing the thing and we got to keep grinding and we got to do 3% or double revenue. But what is that all for? What do we want to create? Because in that is the why. That's the thing that's going to pull us forward to do the work. And I think we get lost in the day to day without seeing the top of Mount Kilimanjaro and really wanting to get there and waking up every morning to do the work, to go on that journey to get to the destination.
Yeah, Andy, that is the biggest entrepreneurial trap.
I'm
Growth
so
for
glad that you
growth's
think so
sake.
too. It's what I see. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't start with why. Simon Sinek, start with why. And what is so ironic about this is I would meet annually with our executives of our company to design a 3 to 5 year strategic plan for our business, even 10 years. Where do we want to be and how fast we're going to grow next year and everywhere. And then I woke up one day after a big failure going, Wait a minute, what's my why?
Hmm.
Where's my life plan? Where's my strategic plan from? Where's my true north? What am I trying to achieve? I didn't have one. I was
Yeah.
just growing. I figured if I just kept growing, things would happen, everything would work out. But I didn't really have a vision for myself and a life plan for myself.
Yeah.
And we've been doing this podcast now. We're in our fourth season, Rich and I. And it's actually through a lot of this podcast, Rich, you've almost seen the evolution of it from thinking time every morning to really creating a life vision for myself and where I want to go and what I want to do, where things started really changing. And the clarity now of what I wanted to achieve as an entrepreneur just became so much clearer because I
Amazing.
had a true north life plan for myself. I know what I want to do in 30 years, 10 years, 5 years, next year, next quarter. I have that now. I didn't have that before.
Yeah.
And so I think you're speaking right to my heart there. That was a key lesson for me.
And you're talking, just so that I'm hearing you, about you personally, not just your business. And is that true?
100% me
Yeah.
personally.
So
My
one of
business
the
had a
things
strategic plan, but it didn't align with my personal plan.
that's the alignment part. Yes. I mean, that's one of the things that I always do with in my work with clients and teams is like, great, we can have this 5, 10 year vision. We can even create a BHAG, right? But why? How do you align into that? Yeah, I don't know if you guys are EOS fans or know much about it, but they have the VTO, the vision traction, right? I have a version of that for the founder, for the leader. What is your personal VTO? What do you want to create? Because we can go build a 30, 100, $500 million business,
Yep.
but if you're not growing, if you're not happy, if you're not, what's the point?
Yeah. And Andy, that again, you're preaching to the choir here, and I love it because in my story, I tried to grow a company to 100 million, but as we were growing to 100 million, my equity was being diluted along the way, so I had to work 10 times as harder
Oh,
to build that business than if I just actually controlled all my
yeah.
equity, kept all my equity, and grew a $10 million company.
Yep.
And by doing that, I lost everything. After 15 years, got fired from the company I co-founded after building
Oh,
it all. But I lost control because I didn't really have clarity into what I was actually trying to accomplish
yep.
as a person. I knew what I wanted my company to accomplish, but I didn't know what I lacked that alignment. And I think that's one of the things I just thought about this as you were saying it. You are the five people you hang around with. And I agree, but there's also a sixth person, and it's yourself.
Yes.
And what are the words that you are telling yourself, and how are you self communicating? And I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, the biggest thing you have there that draws my attention is your manifesto and your
Oh,
compass. Can you tell us about that, and what is that, and why was that so important to put on your LinkedIn profile, and how often do
yeah.
you read that, and what does it mean?
John, it's literally right there. Like I see it every single day. So the first coach that I worked with, she wouldn't allow me to become a client unless I did a couple pieces of homework. I even said, "No, I want to work with you. Let's see how you show up, right?" And one of the things that she wanted me to do was create that manifesto. Who I can help you build a business, I can help you become a great leader, but why? And so I spent 2 weeks editing that manifesto. If I could be anybody, who do I want to be? And so I honestly I forgot the genesis of your question because I got so excited that you brought that up. But I think it's so important for us to define who we want to become. And in terms of the LinkedIn profile, yeah, I can help people grow. I can help people with their teams. But unless we are becoming the version of ourselves that we want to become, all of it is for naught. And so I really wanted founders to know what I'm about, leaders to know what I'm about. If they visit my profile,
Hmm.
I'm not just about scaling a business.
Yeah,
I'm about scaling the minds, which actually makes scaling the business so much easier.
yeah.
And that's why I share that. It's on my website.
Yeah, and I think it all plays into the Think and Grow Rich Napoleon Hill model,
Yep.
right? Which is if your mind can think it and believe it, you can achieve it.
The mind
And
can
just to
what the
give
mind can conceive and believe will achieve.
Achieve. Yes. Yeah.
thank you, sir. And I think just to give people that don't see it right on your LinkedIn profile, which is Andy Hite, Hite, if you want to connect with Andy on LinkedIn, it's things like lead with love, love to lead, feel your way, illuminate the path of others, call your fears friend, become a badass firewalker, make Goliath your bitch, stripe down before every encounter. There's a long list of these things, which again are right in front of you every day. And it's repetition. You're the sixth person. There's the five people you hang around with, but you also need to be giving yourself the right language. I think is where that comes from. And I'm
Yep.
assuming you now, as a coach, probably have the same assignment of your coachees when you start working with them, which is okay, who are you and what are you all about? Is that fair?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have my clients create that manifesto the way my coach did, but the entire basis of our work, everybody comes to me because they want their teams to be healthy. They want to grow their business. But my secret MO is we'll do all that the more you know yourself, because
Mm,
that's going to really determine how you show up as a leader. I talk about with my clients like the 4 levels of leadership that we concentrate on. Because typically we just think of being a manager, a leader, and how do we help our teams. Not everybody is the founder, so we need to know how to lead up. If you're a SVP and you have a CEO, how do you communicate with that person? Oftentimes we have co-founders, or if we're an SVP or something, we how do you lead sideways? The traditional how do we lead down, but the fourth one to your sixth man reference is how do we self-lead? How do we become that person who is interested in scaling our mind, who is interested in leveling up, and is really honest with ourselves and self reflective so that, because with awareness, the key to all of this is awareness. And with awareness becomes opportunity. And the self leadership, I think, is the most important because when we do the work, we're able to lead more our people, whether that's up, sideways, or down. So
Got it.
that sixth man that you talk about, I think is key to all of this work.
So just to be clear, the four levels of leadership are lead up, lead sideways, lead down, lead south.
Yes.
Got it. I love that. It's certainly, and all of those have different, to your point, ways about them,
Yeah.
right? How you communicate to lead up is a little bit different than how you lead down, but it gives that 360. And 360 is not just up, down, sideways, but it's also within. So
Within. Yeah. We do 360s in our work here. And the majority of the work is like being self-reflective. Once people tell you how you're showing up and you get this comprehensive report, the opportunity there is to digest it and decide what do we want to do with it. Self-leadership is key.
Andy, give me the cheat sheet. Give me the hack. What's the one thing on each of those four that I need to be aware of? So when it comes to leading up, what's like the one thing? Hey, if you're leading up, you better remember what?
Really good question. Honestly, I think for all of them, it starts with being authentic, finding the way to communicate authentically and vulnerably. Because oftentimes, what gets lost, whether we're up, sideways, or down, is we think we have to be something. We think we have to have a persona with whomever we're talking to, up, sideways, or down. And for me, in a lot of this work, I think finding your authentic voice and being truthful, say, for example, with your boss. You're not going to manage them and say, you need to do this, but hey, when this happens, I feel this, or I feel unsupported here, or I feel like the organization is not supporting this initiative, or whatever that is. It's just being kind, empathetic, and authentic wherever we are. And I think that's lost a lot in corporate America and in business because frankly, a lot of people, they don't want to make waves, they don't want to offend, they don't want to harm their position for 1,000 different reasons. People put on a face with whomever they're talking to, and the best leaders are those that show up who they are with care, authenticity, empathy. That's what I'd say. Yeah.
Got it. So across the board, you're saying leading up, leading laterally, leading down, and leading self. Show up as authentic, and vulnerable. But the piece specific to leading up, I think I picked up there is when this I feel. And that
Yes.
is a kind of a communication hack when you're leading up to be able to say, when this happens, I feel this way to open up the dialogue. What about leading laterally? What comes to mind for you when we specifically dial in on leading laterally? What would be hey, if you're leading laterally, you better remember?
Um, Oftentimes, I think what gets lost is our ability, and this can be part of the organization's issue. What are we moving towards? And when we're leading laterally, it's how do I align myself, my teammate, with the vision of the organization? Oftentimes, we need to set aside ego and our personal wants and desires. And how do we come together for win wins? How do we support our teammate so that they succeed and we succeed? because we want to try and take the cliche of I at a team, right? That's, I think, a lot of times what hurts organizations. And we have a lot of people looking out for self interest. And a lot of founders, CEOs, leadership teams don't do a great job of sharing what the true vision, the true north of the organization is and why, so that people can buy into it. And when leading sideways, how can I support you? How can you support me so that we accomplish the goals that are given to us?
Wonderful. So my recap on that one would be align leading with the vision of the organization. Because if
Yeah.
you're perceived when you're leading sideways or laterally, if you're perceived as driving your own agenda, that's not going to work. There is no hierarchy with the people who you're leading. So if it's about your agenda, you're just going to get rejected. It needs
Yeah.
to be
And
about the vision of the organization and that agenda.
yeah, I know you guys see this, right? When we're talking to colleagues and it feels like they have some self interest, automatically we have a wall that goes up, whether we know it or not, right? And when we can create trust and psychological safety by not having that agenda, people tend to work a lot better. So it's letting go of the self interest and aligning. Why the hell are we working as a teammate? And what are we trying to accomplish?
But you know where I'm going next? Leading down.
Ah, one of
What's
my
the,
favorites.
hey, if you're leading down, you better remember this. What's the quick tip?
Yeah, I was talking to a client Monday, and she's like, "My God, leading is hard. It is hard. Managing is easy. Do you do the thing on time? That kind of thing. Leading and bringing out the best of people is hard." I often, when we're talking about that kind of leadership down, is if you're a parent, if you know a child, if you have a niece or nephew, I think leadership in that realm is a lot like parenting, because not that you're going to talk down, but if you're a really good parent, you want to bring out the best in your kid. You want them to shine. And I think is looking to see what do they need in order to shine? How can I support them to grow? How can I get out of their way so that I'm not doing it for them, so that they learn the lessons and grow fast, right? It's like a toddler. If we just hold their hand as they walk, they're going to become dependent upon us. Like, encourage them, get out of their way, give them the confidence that you believe in them, and the skills and competence that they need to thrive and succeed.
I think what I heard there, I know John would say servant leadership, and that
Hmm.
is something that he leads by consistently. And that's something I heard in what you said. The other one is uh, help them level up from where they are today
Yep.
instead of evaluating them based on some standardized criteria that they've either met or not met. Meet them where they are and help them level up where they are today to be a better version of themselves versus just meet this objective standardized criteria that the company may need.
Yeah, when we can build a team, an organization of leaders, that's where the best organizations thrive. And so asking questions like, "Hey, what do you see for yourself? How do you envision the next year going? What would you like to accomplish? And how can I support you?" Most people don't lead that way. And think about it. If you're receiving that as an individual contributor and any level of the organization, you're going to be excited. You're going to be more bought in. You're going to feel some autonomy. You're going to feel like you own a part of this.
All right, last one on this line of questions or thinking is leading self. What's
Yes.
the quick hit there?
Get curious. Ask questions of yourself. Look, do everything you can to find out your blind spots where you can get 1% better. 1% can make all the difference. I'm sure you guys have heard this. If you're flying from LA to New York and you're off by just a degree or two, you end up in DC, right? 1% can make all the difference over time. And so we're just looking to see, am I, some big broad strokes, a little too controlling with how I show up and my results? Am I too perfectionistic? Am I not disciplined enough? And try and find one or two things to concentrate on a daily basis to get a little bit better, to be a little bit better.
When you say get curious, is that get curious about yourself or get curious about the perspective of others? Where were you going with that?
Good distinction. I think self. There's a
Okay.
little bit of a slippery slope when we start to think about the perception of others, because our minds can start to be really influenced around, well, people think this of me or people think that of me. And that can be a dark hole.
Got it.
Like, get with those 5 people that are going to challenge you and say, hey, tell me one thing you think I'm doing well, and tell me where you think I might need to grow. If I did this differently, I might get better results. Listen and digest.
Yeah, I think over the course of John referenced 4 seasons of doing the podcast, and we're in the mid 200s or so, or mid hundreds on number of guests we've had. From my memory, I think you are the only person who has said, get curious about yourself, get to know yourself, ask questions, and answer those questions to know who you are and how you work and how you tick. And you're definitely the only person who has said, and I took this down as a quote, is do everything you can to find blind spots. Oh my gosh, does that resonate for me? And you're not saying do as much as you can. You're not saying do it when you have time. You're not saying do it when it's convenient. Do it when you can afford it. Do it after you've had big growth. Do it at the first of the year. You're not saying any of that. You're saying do everything
Everything.
you can to find blind spots. I think that's incredibly powerful and striking to me.
To compare to athletes, right? I'm a Chicago guy. So a Michael Jordan, he didn't wait to to bring in his coaches until he couldn't play well. He's like, tell me one thing today I can do to get better. He had people around him constantly. Not everybody wants to be the best they can be, and that's okay. Like, totally fine. But those that really do want to create a life and work and company that realizes our potential, surround yourself with people, be self-reflective. Those old guys like Epictetus, they knew something. Know thyself, because that is the key to all of it.
I think there's another key here, Andy, that you two just mentioned. People don't understand the power of how small little differences that you make can change everything. One book that was recommended to you, you feel pivoted your life. The
Life.
difference between Michael Jordan and others, even as powerful as he wasn't that big in the grand scheme of things. The story about a 100-meter dash, right? I mean, it's like milliseconds, the winner and the loser, the gold medalist who lives on forever in history, and the one who doesn't. And so it's such small differences. And sometimes the one message from the one person at the right time, like maybe you're giving here today to people, it's so small. And as an entrepreneur, it's sometimes those decisions. You can make one decision and it could lead to your business falling off a cliff or your business going this way or make the wrong acquisition or wrong hire or whatever it may be. The
Yep.
differences are so small, which illustrates the importance of coaches, to your point, and
Yeah.
surrounding yourself with the best in class that can help you propel to the next level. So I want to touch on one last thing before we go there, because this is what you do as a profession, is really coach people to scale their minds. What is badassery and how does that connect?
Funny. So badassery is a thought leaders community where this woman Danielle is curated a bunch of thought leaders from a bunch of different realms. There's AI folks that are a part, there's DEI folks that are a part, there's entrepreneurs of all kinds, a couple of coaches. I joined because really I'm always looking for those 5 people that are going to make me better. And so there's this component of a community of people that are going to make us better at our thought leadership.
To put it differently, it's not one of your services. It's a community that you're a part of called Badassery, which is a bunch of badass
Yeah.
people making shit happen. Basically, this is the
Yeah.
way
And
it
there's a
sounds, right?
component of it. Yeah. And there's a component of it where the founder pimps us out as speakers
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. Right.
Yeah.
And so we're always up leveling our message and talking about what we want to do in the world and what we think.
Okay.
Um, refining those messages. And then there's a booking piece of it, like for workshops, facilitation, keynotes, and that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
Some
Gotcha.
really cool people in there.
Yeah, I want to be part of it just based on the name and what you're talking about here. That to me, people who want to
I
get
can get you in,
together,
John.
yeah, people who want to get together and just kick some ass, right? Just grab
Yeah.
the bull by the horns and make it happen. That's the energy that you need to surround yourself with if you want to achieve greatness in your life, whatever that means to you, right? I think it's really
Yeah.
important to do that. And certainly with your acting background, I could definitely see you being a pretty powerful speaker and dynamic speaker in front of groups. So that'd be
I
exciting.
love it.
How do
Yeah.
people learn more, get more, if somebody wants to work with you a little more? I know you have a couple of assessments on your website that I saw. Like, where do people
Mhm.
start if they wanted to dig in a little bit more?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. So finding me, I think you were kind enough to shout that out earlier, Andy Hite. Pretty easy to search up there. My website, scalingminds.com. I have a special page for your listeners. So if they go to scalingminds.com/EU for Entrepreneurs United, those assessments that you mentioned will be there. There's an entrepreneurial scorecard, like how we doing as an entrepreneur. There's a leadership component, there's a business component, there's a self-leadership component, like who are we? There's also a leadership assessment there. How are we doing as a leader? I have an ebook there on authentic leadership, akin to servant leadership, that I think if we can master that, we can change the world. I really do believe that. Like leadership can change the world. And anybody that is curious about what I do and how I do it and wants to have a some coaching conversations, there's a link there. I'm happy to spend. This is how I built my business from day one. I usually spend about an hour, 90 minutes with someone, and I just coach them so that there's no sales page. There's no, let me show you the power of it, like what we can do. And I'll show you some blind spots. And then you have that awareness that you can take away. So there's a link there. People can schedule some time.
Andy, can you
Yeah.
give entrepreneurs one homework assignment? So, sometime between now and let's say the next 7 days that they're listening to this, what is it that you would challenge them or charge them to do differently as a result of having been influenced by you?
So here's a challenge, and this takes some courage and vulnerability. Find the smartest person that you know, the one that you look up to the most, and say, "Hey, tell me one thing that you think I'd do really well." Soak it in. And tell me one thing that you think I could do better, that if I shifted even 1% in this area, that I would be better, do better, accomplish more. Get curious and start to look for those areas where we can grow.
Excellent. Thank you for being with us, Andy.
Hey, Rich, John, I really appreciate it. Such a fun conversation. Thank you for having me.
Please stick around for a few more minutes while Rich and I break down this episode. Rich, I don't think there's too much in this episode that you and I don't align perfectly with. His message was right on point. He gets definitely at a deep level how people can align their personal and their business interests together. I really love his journey of how he came to find himself and now helps others find where they want to go and how they can achieve greatness in their lives. So for me, there's a lot of connection points here between what we love to talk about and love to focus on, and Andy does. So I love this chemistry between us three.
And gosh, when you think about his four levels of leadership, the leading up,
Yeah.
leading laterally, leading down, and leading yourself. And when I asked about leading up, he immediately went to this prevailing thinking about how he believes you want to show up in all of those levels of leadership, which were
Yeah.
to be kind, to be empathetic, authentic, and vulnerable. Man, it just makes me think, can you imagine a world where everybody was kind, empathetic, authentic, and vulnerable? Like, that would be really cool. And I'm inspired by him. I'm inspired to show up as one of those people who can be those four things, no matter where in those level of leadership that I'm leading.
All right, I got a question. I haven't really thought about this, but authentic came up over and over again. His ebook, which we didn't talk much about, but you can get on his website, scalingminds.com/EU, I think, as well, is his ebook called Authentic Leadership. And you mentioned empathy and vulnerability and a few other components that you just mentioned. Isn't that all what he means by authentic leadership? Is authentic leadership maybe the catch all of those characteristics?
I don't believe so, but I'm not sure I'd be the authority on that. This reminds me of a conversation I think maybe you and I had lots of podcasts ago, maybe 2 years ago, about some of the difference between authentic and transparent.
Okay.
And authentic is being who you are and clarity on how you show up with your values and not compromising those, versus transparency is sharing in sharing everything. And I actually had a learning lesson on that, just as a quick aside, where I thought transparency is important. That builds trust. We need to be transparent all over the place.
Mhm.
And I was in a meeting with executives who corrected me on that, who said, actually, transparency that's unregulated is dangerous. It's transparency that's audience appropriate. And it's actually transparent to say, hey, I can't go there and talk to you about that.
Yep.
That's not the type of thing I'm comfortable getting into with you. That is transparent.
It's also
That
authentic.
and again, when I come to the authentic part, I think of values and not compromising values.
Okay.
Transparency, I think of sharing. Authentic, I think of values. And again, I'm not the authority on it.
Yeah.
That's just how I
I
separate them. So when I look at empathetic,
Mhm.
sure, maybe that's a value you have, or vulnerable. But when I think of empathetic, I think of really allowing myself to be in the other person's shoes
Yep.
and feel what they're feeling and not stand aside and just criticize. When I think of
Yep.
vulnerable, I think of not having to self protect, allowing myself to talk about things that may not be flattering to me. And then when I think of authentic, I think I need to show up with my values. And even when it's not convenient, even when it's borderline not appropriate, I need to show up with my values and be authentic to myself and my values.
Mhm. Articulated. And to answer your question, no, I can't imagine a world like that. How amazing would that be,
Oh
right?
my
And
God.
I can't reach it, Rich, because there's a lot of people who, if you asked them, are you authentic? Are you vulnerable? Do you lead with empathy? They would say, yeah, of course I do. But do they really? And I think that maybe that's where Andy brings in these self assessments and 360s and really understanding and be curious. And I think even if I reflect back on my own personal journey, Rich, it's when I received feedback from people I really cared about and did 360s, and 360 being all the way around, and got feedback that I was like, "Oh, I guess I'm not showing up as who I thought I was showing up." And the power of that. Now that I think about it, what you think you are from a form of leadership or type style of leadership may not be how people are experiencing it. Do you have the courage or the vulnerability to ask the question? Even ask the question you asked on the thing. Find the one person you really look up to and ask them, "What's one thing I do really well, and one thing that can really move the needle for me?" Do you ask enough people that question? Do you do 360 assessments on yourself? As an entrepreneur, that can be somewhat challenging because, especially small, medium-sized businesses, Rich, they don't have a leadership development department that's saying, "Okay, Mr. Entrepreneur, Mrs. Entrepreneur, it's time for your 360." It's really upon that entrepreneur to be like, you know what, I want this. I want to be curious and I want to learn how I can be better. Not enough entrepreneurs step there. They just assume that their leadership style is what it is.
And I think that taps into the vulnerability piece.
No.
It's vulnerable to do a 360, uh, but it's valuable. It's more valuable than it is the risk of vulnerability.
Yep.
In other words, to be an entrepreneur and say to those who we work with, look, I'm not good at everything I do. I try to do a lot of things and I try to do them really well. And I'm not good at everything I do. I don't even understand or know some of the things I'm not good at. And by the way, I don't expect you to be excellent at everything you do either. let's just have open and honest dialogue. Can you help me out on some of the things that maybe you feel like I'm not so good at, that maybe I'll be able to get better at it, or maybe we'll have to outsource it, or maybe I'll refer to you if it's something you're good at. But I just want to expose some of my blind spots, and I'd like to have an honest conversation about what are some of the things that maybe I don't see, that maybe I'm not so good at. And then I'm happy to share the same with you, because neither of us can be excellent at everything we do. And the goal is to understand what are those things. And John, one of the things that you and I got from the podcast with John Mitchell is, on a self-assessment, if you're going to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, downgrade yourself by 2, because we're typically biased and rate ourselves a little too high. And now there are people that are martyrs and they constantly rate themselves too low, and they might want to upgrade themselves by 1. So if you're rating yourself a 3 on something, I don't know. But it'd be an interesting assessment. And I don't want to do it here live on the podcast, but if we went, how kind are you? Scale of 1 to 10. Downgrade your number by 2 for your self-bias. How empathetic are you? Scale of 1 to 10. How authentic are you to your values? Scale of 1 to 10. And by the way, if you don't know your values, I'm not sure how you can be authentic with them. And how vulnerable are you? Scale of 1 to 10, downgrade by 2. And with that more accurate self-assessment that John Mitchell recommended to us, I think we can be empowered to go in with those we work with and ask vulnerably, hey, what are some things you feel like I can upgrade?